and welcome back to my channel. It's so nice to have you guys here. So recently I've been getting so many comments on social media and also in the comments section of my videos. So today we're going to be painting this. So if you want to gift someone something really special but you don't have a lot of cash, then why not paint this for them? I think that would be such a beautiful present for anyone that you care about. So as always, the link to the reference image and also all the materials that we'll need today will be in the description box. So make sure you check there first and have a little read through, and I hope you enjoy the video. So this is a reference image that we'll be using today. I've cut it into 3 parts here just to sort of make it more simpler. So we've got the sky, the background and then the ground. So the first thing we want to do is map these areas out in our painting. So I'm going to take some green and some magenta and I'm going to make a fairly neutral colour. So I'm going to add a bit of white as well. So it's nothing too bright, and we're just going to use this colour just to map it out a little bit and get an idea of exactly where things are going to go. I'm also going to map out just a few of the trees to give us a bit of structure, so when we're looking back at the reference photo we've got some sort of guide to go by. Okay, so now we're going to go on to our first layer, so using green, magenta and a little bit of white just to lighten that up. We're going to use this for the middle section. And for the sky we're going to get mostly white but just add a little hint of yellow to give it some warmth. And so I'm literally just going to paint that whole top section with this white and yellow mixture. So next, using this magenta and green mixture, I'm going to make it a little bit lighter than this as well, but this is going to go in the middle section. I basically want it to be like a greeny grey colour. And I'm just going to paste that all in the middle section as the background of the first layer. With a clean damp brush, I'm going to go over with like a circular sort of motion over this line just to blur it, because obviously this is the background, so we don't want any harsh lines or harsh contrasts as such. Just to blend it in really. I mean, most of this will be covered up with leaves and trees anyway. So for the ground, I'm going to make a muted green, so I'm adding sap green with just a dash of magenta, and I'll probably add some white to this as well just to lighten it up a little bit. But yeah, we basically want a muted green. And again, this will be mostly covered up as well, but it's just providing that first layer to give it a bit of grounding and give us something just to build onto. So now I want to start to build up the layers, and I'm going to start with the background first. So using a mixture again of green and magenta, but more magenta this time to keep it nice and warm. And we're just going to literally start to add in a few brush strokes just here and there to start building it up. So I'm going to add some white into that same mixture because I really love the shade, but I just feel like it needs to be a little bit lighter and just to bring out some of the highlights as well. And I don't really use fan brushes very often, but for foliage and paintings of forest, trees, bushes, anything like that, they're absolutely perfect. So if you're looking to paint a lot of forests, then I would definitely invest in getting a fan brush. And adding white to that same mixture, I'm just going to add in a few little brush strokes here and there along the horizon, just to blend that line and to make it look a bit more interesting and intriguing. So I'm going to do a similar thing now with green, using it straight out of the tube, and again we're just going to build up the layers and add some different tones in there. And this is going to be like for the branches, so I'm adding green with a bit of yellow, and I'm just going to do a similar brush stroke in different areas of the painting. And I'm going to do the same thing with the same mixture, but this time adding a little bit of white in there, and just again to pick up some highlights. So now I'm just adding a bit more yellow into that mixture, and it's going to just really bring out that lovely jewel coloured tone of yellow. I love it so much. And now I'm going to do the same thing but with just green this time to get it really saturated in colour and to give a bit more dimension to it. And using a muted green, I'm just going to add a bit more detail in the centre. So I'm going to reuse that mixture that we had before and just pop in a few little details there. Now so far I feel quite happy with that as a background, so I'm going to do a similar thing but on the foreground instead now. So again, you're getting that green and magenta mixture. I'm just going to slot in some little areas of different shades to really get that feeling that it's a forest floor. Now I've added some highlights and lowlights, I'm going to go straight in with some green to really get that vibrant edge to it and to introduce some more colour. Now I'm going to create a more yellow green, so literally mixing sap green and yellow to bring out those lovely golden sort of greenery colours. And I'm going to add some white to that colour so we can make a highlighted version of the same colour. So this is going to be like where the sunshine is hitting the grass. So next it's time to pop in the trees, and it's more useful to think of them as objects or shapes at this point to make sure we get them in the right places. So I'm going to be using a mixture of all three colours here to get like a brown. So first of all, we start with the ones in the back. Now you can see the ones in the back are a slightly lighter brown because they have the yellow and the orange from the sun, and obviously because they're more in the distance they're more faded. So I'm going to be using this colour, and I'm just going to not be too critical about it, but I'm just going to pop them in whereabouts I think they are roughly. And this is where I realise how bad I really am at drawing a straight line. And this is a great time to have a little play around with these colours to see the different types of tones and different colours you can get. So if it looks too warm and too red, then add more green. If it looks too green, then add more red, and yellow will brighten it up and make it more orangey coloured. So yeah, just have a little play around with that and see what different tones you can get. I also have a little bit of black just off screen, which I'm going to be using for the trees that are more in the forefront. But it is the same colour mixture, I've just added a little tiny bit of black to it. I'm just adding a bit of white to that mixture, and where the trees are in the centre, which is where the sun's going to sort of shine through, I'm just adding just a little highlight on both of those trees there in the centre. And I'm just going to speed this a little bit up because it's taken a very long time to put in these trees. And again, I'm using a lighter brown mixture here because they're further away into the distance and because the sun's sort of shining through, so it's adding a bit of a yellow tinge to it. So next I want to pop in the shadows to the trees. So to do that I'm using a bit of sap green and also a little bit of black, and this is more sort of marking out where they're actually going to go rather than the final look. So obviously we want to get our perspectives right, so it's really important to look at the reference photo for this bit. So I'm just using this colour to pick out those shadowy areas, and I feel like this is giving more and more the illusion of the sun being really low in the sky. And I always think while you've got a certain colour there and it's still wet, check your reference photo to see if there's anywhere else in the painting that has got a similar colour. So I've just added a little bit of white and just added in a few more details. So I'm going to start to add more details on the trees now. So I'm using the dark brown mixture, which was a mix of all the colours and a little bit of black if you need it. And for the branches in the background, I'm going to be using my fan brush. I'm being a little bit haphazard, otherwise this video would be super long, but spend as much time as you want getting all the details just right. And now I'm going to pick up my green and start adding some foliage. So I'm just using my brush to really sort of randomize the leaves. So I'm using different techniques such as just dabbing it on, using just the corner of my brush, using the side, and I'd maybe say to experiment a little bit before going straight in with your painting if you've never used a fan brush. I am actually going to do a video soon using certain techniques with the fan brush and the palette knife, really focusing on the tools that we use and what effects they can give. And in real life, foliage has so many different tones and colours and values of different greens. So I've just mixed together a sap green and a white, and I'm just adding a few more details just to give that illusion of more layers. So I feel like the background looks a bit bare, so I'm going to make some muted green colours to add in some trees in the background. So I'm just using a bit of each of the colours and adding it to that brown mixture that we had before, just to give the illusion of trees in the background. So we've definitely got green in there and there's a lot of yellow, but I feel like we're missing a bit of warmth in there. So I'm going to mix, again it is a mixture of all three colours, but it's going to be a bit more magenta-y and a bit more warm this time. And it's sort of like a warm brownish colour. And I'm going to add that on parts of the trees and in little areas of the painting to bring that warmth back to it. So I want to add some more highlights onto the grass, so I'm adding white, green and a bit of yellow, and we're going to just bring out some of those highlights. Again, you can spend as long as you want on this bit. I'm doing it a little bit quicker than I would have liked just for the purpose of this video, but just make sure you're always using your reference photo for colours and shape references. So I feel a bit like our trees are merging into their shadows, so using a dark brown, I'm just going to add in the bottom of the trunks just to differentiate between the tree and the shadow. So now that the ground's mostly dry, using a mixture of yellow and white, I'm going to add some more highlights onto the ground, like where the sun's hitting. I know when I first started painting, I'd almost be afraid of painting over something that I'd already painted, but I think painting is about all the layers, and even though you're painting over something, partly some of the background will be shining through and affecting the colours. So now you want to wait for that to completely dry before going on to the next layers. So now we're going to add sort of a glaze. So using yellow and white, we're going to try and recreate the sunlight coming through the trees. So you only want a bit of paint on your brush, not too much. And we're going to be using a circular motion and just really eking out that paint more and more and more. So we're literally just blending it out for as far as it will go. So next we're going to add some more sky in and sort of undo some of that foliage. So with a bit of white, I'm just going to take the corner of my fan brush and just dot on different areas of white. So there's tiny little speckles of where the light is coming through the trees. This makes it look more detailed, and it also really gives a really good contrast between the dark trees and leaves and the bright sky behind. So again, I want to bring some more warmth into it, so bringing in some magenta, a little bit of green and a bit of white. We're going to add some highlights, which are obviously going to be in this warm pinky colour. And like before, I'm just using the corner of my fan brush to pick out some highlights that I can see on the reference photo. So I really want to add some more texture to the trees, so I'm going to make a really dark brown using black, magenta and green. And using my fan brush, I'm just going to drag it up and down the tree to sort of create a little bit of texture, and I'm just using the fan brush almost like a texturizer itself. I'm not really doing anything on purpose here, just literally seeing what marks it creates. And I'm going to add some highlights to that now, so adding a little bit of white and green to the same mixture and a little bit of yellow to make it more browny. I'm going to do exactly the same but not press on as hard basically. And just to blend all that in again, I'm going to go over the top again one last time with the black, the green, magenta and a little bit of yellow. So I'm going to add some more shadows in the ground, so using black and a bit of sap green, we're just going to counteract those highlights with some contrasting shadows. So I'm going to do another layer of some highlights. So I've just got green, white, and I'm just adding a bit of yellow to bring up that warmth again. So I'm just going to add some more highlights in and just give it a bit more detail. And to make those highlights even more vivid, I'm going to add in so much yellow. It's going to be so like luminous and hopefully jump right off the page. And so I'm just going to pop that on some areas where the sun will definitely be picking up on the bits of grass. And at this point I love to take a photo on my phone of the painting because it really helps you look at it as a 2D picture, and you can then hold it up to the reference photo and see exactly what it's missing. So I want to add some more warmth in again on the forest floor because I feel like there's a lot of cold browns, but I want to add in some warm browns. So I'm using a mixture of sap green, magenta and yellow, but obviously the magenta and probably a bit of yellow is going to be the predominant colour. I'm just going to start to add in a few bits of detail, mostly at the bottom of the tree trunks where there's going to be roots and lots of browny coloured things. And I'm just adding a bit of green to that same mixture and doing the same thing to add sort of warm greeny tones. And adding a bit of white to that, I'm going to use this for some muted highlights. So now I just want to add in a few more shadowy green shades, so using a mixture of green, black and with a little bit of white in it, I'm just going to add some different shades into the shadows to make it a little bit more realistic and to give the ground the illusion that it's grassy and uneven. And just to offset those dark shadows, I'm using now a light muted brown just to pick out some more highlights, but not necessarily luminous ones, just more brighter highlights. So I'm going to add yellow straight out the tube onto some areas where we've got the luminous greeny colours, just to really give it that pop of colour. And once again, I'm going to take another photo just to check the differences between that and the reference photo. And one thing I noticed, there's definitely more sky showing through on the reference photo. So I'm going to take some white and I'm just going to add in some little patches of colour in the trees behind to give that illusion of the sky coming through the trees. And I feel like the background line is a little bit flat, so I'm just going to use a highlighted yellowy and white colour just to make that ground look a little bit more bumpy and uneven. And I think that's pretty much finished. So thank you so much guys for joining with me in that tutorial. I really hope that you're pleased with the painting that you ended up with. As always, if you post on Instagram or Twitter, make sure you tag me in so that I can see what you lovely people have come up with. And have a beautiful day. Bye!